Welcome back. We've finished talking about sensation, and now let's talk about what we do with all that sensory input. Perceptual organization. How do we form meaningful perceptions from sensory information? Well, obviously we organize it, but it's not quite that simple. In the early 1900s, German psychologists noticed that when given a cluster of sensations, we tend to organize these sensations into a gestalt. A gestalt is the German word for whole. And we do this in order to give the sensation meaning. The underlying principle to Gestalt psychology is this: the human mind abhors disorder or cognitive dissonance. We all have the urge to organize. So perception is the process of integrating, organizing, and interpreting sensory information. Let's talk about two types of perceptual processing. Bottom-up processing. It begins with our sensory receptors. We detect lines, angles, and colors that form the image. In this type of processing, our mind moves from the part to the whole. This is also known as data-driven processing. Second type of processing is top-down processing. And this emphasizes the importance of the observer's cognitive processes in arriving at meaningful perceptions. So this is where our mental process moves from the whole to the part. It's also called conceptually driven processing. Let's take a look at these concepts further. Take a look at this picture. What type of processing do you think this is? Is this bottom up or is this top down? This is going to be an example of top down processing, and here's why. Our experiences and expectations enable us to immediately perceive the incomplete letters. And it also enables us to perceive the numbers as correct numbers and not as letters. So look closer at the H and the B. They're actually exactly the same, but we're still able to read the word phone and the word number, even though that H and that B are exactly the same. Now look at the S and the 5. Those are all exactly the same. So obviously you were relying on your experience and your expectation in order to organize this into a meaningful whole. All right, now see if you can read this paragraph. Most likely you can, because your experience enables you to immediately perceive the scrambled letters as meaningful words and sentences. According to research at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter in what order the letters in the word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letter be at the right place. The rest can be a total mess, and you can still read it without problem. This is because the human mind does not read every letter by itself, but the word as a whole. Again, this slide demonstrates the concept of Gestalt, or the urge to organize into a meaningful whole. Now let's talk about ESP. ESP is what we would call perception, organizing something meaningful, without sensation. So let's drill into this a little bit more. ESP is perception of information by some other means than a normal process. Parapsychology is the scientific investigation of claims of paranormal phenomena. While some studies have claimed to support the existence of ESP, these studies have not on a whole been successfully replicated. So replication on the topic of ESP is elusive. So now let's do an experiment together. One thing that you probably don't know about me is that I really do have ESP. So I'd like you to take note of what I'm talking about and see if you can answer these questions in your head. Pick a number between 1 and 10. Now multiply that number by 9. If this number is greater than 1 digit, add those digits together. Now subtract 5. So whatever number you have, find the letter that corresponds to that number in the alphabet. For example, if your number is 1, you're going to find the letter A. Number 2, letter B. Number 3, letter C. Okay, so you got that letter. Now, pick a country that begins with that letter. Now, pick an animal that begins with the second letter in that country. So now what I'd like for you to do is focus on that animal's color. Take a minute to focus really, really hard, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop into your mind right now and read your mind. Okay, are you focusing hard? So what I'm reading is that most of you are focusing on the color of the animal, and that color is gray. All right, well, I have a confession to make. I don't have ESP, and that was a trick. So here's how I tricked you. I asked you to pick a number between 1 and 10. Say you pick number 3. I asked you to multiply that by 9. So 9 times 3 is 27. I asked you to add those two digits together, which is 9. And then I asked you to subtract 5 from it, and you're going to end up with 4. And then you're going to find the letter that corresponds in the alphabet. So A, B, C, D. Okay. And then you're going to pick a country that starts with the letter D. Most people pick Denmark, by the way. Then you're going to pick an animal that starts with the second letter of that country, which is E. Most people pick elephant. And then I ask you to focus on the color, and elephants are gray. So what's the trick there? Well, let's try that out. For example, number 6. Say you pick number 6, the number between 1 and 10. You multiply it by 9. What is that? It's 54. 5 plus 4 is 9. So what's going to happen after those first 3 steps is you're always going to end up with number 9. Okay, and then I'm going to ask you to subtract 5. Everybody's going to end up with a number 4. Most people pick Denmark as the country from the 4th letter in the alphabet, etc., etc. So this really is not ESP. Sorry, guys. So the lesson learned here in my little experiment with you is that possible explanations include coincidence and the fallacy of positive incidences. And what I mean by that is we attribute an erroneous perception to sensory input. You may have erroneously perceived that I have mental telepathy, or ESP, because of the erroneous conclusion around your perception. So in short, illusions, which is really what ESP is, illusions are misinterpretation or ascribing an incorrect meaning to a cluster of sensory experiences. So let's look back at this concept of Gestalt, which, as you know by now, means whole. So Gestalt psychologists showed that a figure formed a whole that is different from its surroundings. Take a look at this picture. We organize the picture by seeing a figure. And the figure that you're probably going to see in this picture are either men walking downstairs, so that would be the figure if you can see those men walking downstairs, or you also might see a different figure, which are arrows against a black background. So in this picture, the figure actually is not static, but it switches places with the ground, depending on what you're focusing on, because the ground is the background or the surroundings. So this is a great example of a non-static figure ground image. Here's another image with a figure ground example. If you focus on the white part of the image, you are likely going to see a vase or even a candlestick. Okay. Now, change your focus to the blue part of the image. You're likely to see two faces looking at each other. So, in this case, the figure and the ground change places. Let's look at one more. So what Gestalt psychologists have displayed in the figure ground concept is that we constantly have shifting perceptions. This is a great example of another shifting perception. Can you see the young girl in this picture? Focus on the center left of the picture as the girl's left ear, and just to the left of that you're going to see her nose in a profile. And you're looking at her from behind, and that's her bonnet with the ribbons streaming down her hair. So that's the young girl. Now, see if you can find the old lady in this image. So to find the old lady in this image, look down at around the collar of the young girl, or the necklace or choker that's around the young girl's neck. That's actually the mouth of the old lady. And the old lady's chin is right next to that collar on the young girl's dress. And this is going to be a profile picture with the old lady's eye was the young girl's ear, etc. So again, this is a great example of shifting perceptions, that figure-ground relationship is anything but stable. Next, we're going to look at Gestalt grouping laws. So after distinguishing the figure from the ground, our perception needs to be organizing the figure into a meaningful form, and the way that we do this is through some grouping laws of Gestalt psychology. So we're going to take a look at proximity, similarity, closure, and continuity in the next portion of this presentation on perception.